make mistakes. That's part of being human. But when it comes to chess, there are only a certain amount of mistakes you can make before your opponent checkmates you. And when you're playing as one of the best, then the most innocent looking move might be the one that makes you lose the game. Today, I'm going to show you 5 different positions played by grandmasters or super grandmasters where these very strong players have made a subtle mistake that doesn't look so bad, but that actually made them lose the game. So this first position was played in the Chess Olympiad just a few months ago between the current world champion Magnus Carlsen and German grandmaster George Meier, who now plays for Uruguay. Now, I was actually at the Olympiad, so I actually saw this game live for a little bit, but this is move 74. So at this point, the players had played for a very long time and George Meier had played a fantastic game against Magnus Carlsen. I mean, most people thought he was going to draw that game, and that would obviously be a huge result with the black pieces against the world champion. So you might ask yourself why the engine is saying that this is an equal position. Well, the reason for that is that the only way that white can win this is by checkmating the black king. There's no other way, because white can never exchange queens, because then black is going to promote. So white cannot try to go for some check and exchange queens because black is a lot faster in promoting, a lot faster than what white is. So white cannot do that. The only way white can win is by checkmating. But it's really hard to do that because, I mean, black has a queen and white's king is very exposed. So in most positions, there's going to be a million checks that black can do and stop white from checkmating. Now in this position, white had gone, for a few checks, we'd seen a few checks, and now queen e4 check was the last one. Now this was move 74, and the players had been playing for hours. I mean, we're talking about 4 or 5 hours, maybe even more. So obviously the players were really tired at this point. And queen e4 check looks like a really subtle and innocent looking move. I mean, white is just checking and seeing where the king goes. But here's the thing. Black in this position had to make a choice between going king h8 or king g8. These are the only 2 legal moves that black has here. And one of these 2 moves actually loses the game, whereas the other one draws the game. And this is actually really, really, really beautiful. And, you can try to take a moment to figure out which one draws and which one loses. But in the game, George Meier went king h8. And this move loses. Now, this looks very natural because if you go king g8, which actually is the move that draws, white may have h7 check, and this is something that can look a little bit scary because, I mean, black doesn't want white to push their pawns too much, because if they do that, then it might be that white is faster in promoting somehow at any point if white exchanges queens. So, I mean, black actually wants these pawns to stay here. But the reason why this draws, and this is so beautiful, is because after white does king g6, which is one of the few checkmate attempts that white has in this position, black has this fantastic move, which is b1 bishop or queen. It doesn't matter, but let's put bishop because of the beauty of it. b1 bishop. Queen has to capture on b1. It's the only move, otherwise white loses the queen. And now there is the fantastic move, queen g7 check. If white captures, it's a stalemate. So let's say that white doesn't capture, instead white goes king h5. Well, then there is queen f7 check, and if the king moves, there's going to be plenty of checks, and black will be able to win one of the pawns, and if black wins one of the pawns, then there should be a draw. So queen g6 check, and this is so pretty as well. There is king h8 now. And I mean, this is absolutely amazing. If queen takes queen, it's a stalemate. And let's say that black just goes king g5. Then there is queen f4 check. This is just absolutely amazing. If king takes f4, it's a stalemate. If king h4, if there's queen h2. And then after king g5, the queen comes back. So George Meier actually went king h8 in this position. And the reason that this doesn't work is because after king g6, white is threatening to checkmate either on e8 or on a8. And if the black's queen would go to c8 to stop this checkmate, then white has queen e5 check and then checkmate on g7. So let me just show this to you so that you see it. Here we go. That is a checkmate. So after king g6, you have to go b1 and you have to get the queen out of here. If the queen stays over here, then there's going to be a checkmate going on. So you have to go b1, and George, he actually played b1 bishop. This is the game. So, I mean, you know what? If I could promote to bishop, I would do it too. It looks pretty cool. So after this, white has to capture the bishop because otherwise, I mean, black just captures the queen. So captures. But now queen g7 doesn't work because after queen g7 check, white captures with a check. In the previous position, the king was here. So this was a stalemate. But in this position, it's a check. And so it's lost. After this, queen b8 is a checkmate. So you can't do that. So now there isn't this queen g7 check idea where you either stalemate or do an amount of checks that will make you win the pawns. No, there isn't that anymore. So in this position, George went for queen c6 check. But after king g5 and then queen c5, white was able to block with the queen. And then, you know, black started to do some more checks. But now the king is able to go up. And in this position, George Meier resigned against Magnus Carlsen because there's, once again, the idea of going queen f6 check or queen b8, queen f6 check and then checkmate, or queen b8 checkmate. So we can see how one little mistake makes a huge difference in games of this level. The next game that I'm going to show you was played in 2019 between the world champion Magnus Carlsen and the super grandmaster Aronian. Now, at this point, he was 2600, but today he's 2785. Now, this was played in the London Chess Classic, which is a really important invitational tournament in England, where only, you know, super strong grandmasters are invited. So in this position, white is slightly better. White has a little bit more space, a little bit more center, and perhaps a few, you know, better squares. But it's definitely not terrible for black in any single shape or form. In this position, the last move that was played was bishop e3, placing this bishop in the same diagonal as the queen, which obviously, you know, makes the queen a little bit uncomfortable over here on a7. So one of the very natural moves to play here is to go queen c7, and this is what happened in the game. The idea of this move is simply to get the queen out of this pin so that the knight can move freely and the knight is simply just not pinned. Now, the idea of going queen c7 is also that black wants to actually capture here with a piece and not with a pawn, because if black captures with a pawn, then the pawn on c5 is going to become very weak. Let's say that black goes queen a8. Then if we just look at this pawn structure, we can see that black's pawn structure would become very weak and white would maybe at some point be able to go e5. But not only that, in all endgames, like these pawns would be a huge weakness for black. So black went queen c7 to simply be able to capture back here with a piece so that, you know, if something like this, black would simply get a nice and solid position. Now, black overlooked a big tactical mistake by going queen c7. Once again, you guys can pause the video and try to find it. But this is very, very, very beautiful as well. And, well, this is what happened in the game. So, instead of queen c7, the best move in this position would actually have been to go knight h7. This may look very strange. This move has a couple different purposes. One, to avoid the next move that I'm going to show you. Two, to open up for this bishop, maybe at some point perhaps being able to look towards b2 and c3 and perhaps at some point capture over here. But not only that, also to move around the knight and place it in a better square. The knight is not well placed on f6 because after a move such as queen c7, there is the fantastic move which Magnus Carlsen played, e5. And this is really beautiful because the idea of this, which Levin completely overlooked probably, is that if black captures, which is what black pretty much needs to do, because if black moves the knight, which is actually what Aronian did, he went knight h7, then I mean white is going to get a terrible, terrible, terrible pawn structure, and this is going to be a big, big, big advantage for white. So the idea is that if d takes e5, there is bishop takes c5, only move is to capture back with the queen. there is rook d8 check, and this is a really beautiful tactic. And here, if black captures the rook, then white wins the queen. And if black simply goes king h7, then white can first capture the queen and then capture the rook, which means that white wins the rook. So white wins material after bishop takes e5, and I mean, we're talking about big material, the sort of material that at this level you resign if you lose. So this is actually now completely winning for white. So after e5, Levin went knight h7, and here, I mean, white was able to go knight d5, queen a7. I mean, then white even captured on e7. This is so beautiful. Captures on d6. And while the game continued for some 20-something more moves, but this is already a +4 position, as black's pieces are just so terrible here. White is going d7, and this pawn is threatening this rook. It's, you know, if the rook goes somewhere random over here, it's going to promote, and if the rook goes somewhere else, then bishop takes knight is possible. So knight e4 was played, and then Magnus won the rook, and then, well, in this position, Magnus was just simply an exchange up. So this was a lot of advantage, and once again, at this level, being an exchange up is a lot. Like, it's really a lot. But it's not only that, it's also that white just has fantastic pieces. White has the bishop pair. White has these pawns over here, completely blocking this a pawn. This bishop on b5 is really well placed, and basically all of white's pieces are coordinating really well. But being an exchange up in an open position like this, that at any point might turn into an endgame, at this level is completely winning. So this really subtle move, queen c7, made Levin Aronian lose the game. So this next game was played in the Candidates Tournament 2020 between American Grandmaster Fabiano Caruana and Russian Grandmaster Kirill Alekseenko. Now, for people who don't know, the Candidates Tournament is pretty much the most important chess tournament in the world, apart from the World Chess Championship match, as the winner of the candidates gets to match the current world champion for the title of being world champion. So this is a really important tournament. I mean, only the best out of the best get to play this. And in this position, white is threatening something really big. White is threatening to go queen takes d7, and after queen takes to go knight f6 check. So let me just show you this. This is the threat that white has. So white is threatening to just win a piece. Now in the initial position, white is actually a piece up, but black has 3 pawns compensating for the piece. So actually in many endgames, it would be a little bit unclear to see who is better, because 3 passed pawns together can sometimes become better than a piece. So it all depends. It's definitely a very strange position where white doesn't really want to exchange pieces. White wants to keep pieces, and the only thing that white can do is to try to create a big attack towards the king, as white is a piece up and has 1 more piece to attack with than what black has to defend with right now. So in this position, because of this threat of capturing on d7, black made a very logical move, which is to go king g7. The idea of this move is simply that you're avoiding knight f6 check, so now there isn't any tactic like this. Now guys, this next move is going to blow your absolute mind. Can you guys try to guess what white's next move is? Because this actually, when I saw it, it completely blew my mind, like out of this world. Okay, you guys are never gonna guess it. I really don't think you guys are gonna guess it. But the reason why king g7 doesn't work is because of, guys, be ready for this, king h1. It looks like this move doesn't do anything at all, but what it actually does is that it's opening up this file for the rook, and black has now spent 1 move for nothing pretty much. Like, this king on g7 is really badly placed. So now white is going to get an insanely beautiful attack. So I'll show you what happened in the game. Black went knight e5, and then white went knight h4, simply threatening to go knight f5 check at some point, maybe after rook g1. And then after h5, which also was an inaccuracy, rook g1 came, and after bishop f8, well, knight f4. And this is now a really, really, really bad position for black. There's so many threats. And what I was talking to you about before, about the whole, that the only way that white can win this is by creating a big attack. Well, that is literally what white has been able to do. There's now this threat of capturing on h5. There's knight f5 check. Sometimes there's even threats of capturing here and then going knight e6 check. So yeah, this was a really beautiful move. Knight h5 was a brilliant move. And the game went on for just a little bit more, but basically at the end, black, I'll show you, black pretty much almost got checkmated. So this is really, 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 really beautiful here. Black resigned. But so you may ask yourself, what should black have done instead of king g7? So the best move in this position was actually rook c6, which looks like a very strange move, but the idea is that after queen takes d7, there is bishop h2 check. And now, you know, after king captures, black can capture the queen. And this is now, you know, this can just be captured by the rook. There isn't knight f6 check. So the idea of going rook c6 is to avoid white from going knight f6 check. So that is a really, really, really beautiful move. I think rook c6, and white would still maybe have been slightly better because white has still more attacking chances. But at least after something like king h1, the king wouldn't have spent one time going to g7, and this rook is actually just much better placed on c6 than what it is on c8. I just think that this is a really cool and nice idea, and that is why I wanted to show you this. This next game was played in a blitz tournament in Paris, so it was a blitz tournament, so obviously the importance of this game is maybe not as much as in one of the previous classical games that I've shown you from, for instance, the candidates, but the reason I wanted to show you this position is because I think that it's such a beautiful positional mistake that the player does that I just think it's really instructional to see it. Now, Anand has been world champion. He is India's strongest chess grandmaster. I mean, a super grandmaster. And Fabiano Caruana, well, he's an American, really strong grandmaster, also a super grandmaster. I'm sure that you guys both know of these. Fabiano Caruana has played the World Chess Championship match in the past, and he's never been world champion, but I wouldn't be surprised if he ever became one. Let me know, actually. Do you think that Fabio is ever going to become world champion? Anyways, this was played in 2017, and in this position, we can see that it's relatively equal. Perhaps white is slightly better because white has a little bit more space, and this pawn is a little bit weak, and this king is a little bit vulnerable. But apart from that, I mean, it's a relatively equal position. Now, black made a move that is very subtle, doesn't look like it's a mistake, but it actually changed the course of the game. And that is to go a4 in this position. The evaluation goes from being +1 to +2.7 or 2.6 after this move. Now, why is this such a terrible move, you may ask? It doesn't look so bad, right? What you're doing is that you're simply threatening this bishop, and I mean, how bad can it be to just push your pawn one step? Well, the answer is that it can be very bad. And the reason for that is because after bishop, you know, slowly went to a2, and, you know, black made a couple moves, white was able to place this knight on b4. So the issue, the reason why a4 is so bad is because it's giving up this b4 square. And that slight mistake of giving the b4 square to the opponent made Fabiano lose the game. So I just think that this is so pretty. This knight was able to go to b4. This knight is now beautiful placed here on b4. The king can never move because there are so many different attacks towards the king with the queen and the knight. It's perfectly placed, but not only that, I mean, now the knight also has the opportunity of going to d3 and to f4. So basically, going for this move, I'll show you what happened. So this is how the game continued. So it's kind of irrelevant how the game continued, but the point is that this knight, the path that was created for this knight, now white won the game. The important thing is that the path that was created for this knight after this a4 move became the biggest reason of why black lost this game. This knight just went from being a knight that is pretty well situated on d4 to having so many different options of where to go. So we can see here the importance of rerouting your pieces to the best squares, but also the importance of making sure that you're stopping your opponent from doing that, because one piece that is, you know, maybe worth 3 points. I mean, knights are typically worth 3 points, but if the knight is really amazing, like it became later on, I mean, you know, in that specific position, the knight might be worth a lot more. The last position that I'm going to show you is from the Sinkfield Cup between Fabiano Caruana and Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. Maxime is France's #1 player. He's a super grandmaster, really strong. I actually have a video of when I played a blitz game against him. He's a funny guy. But actually, this is a pretty crazy position. I mean, black is 2 pawns up, but at the same time, black's pieces are a little bit in weird positions. This queen on b2 is right now, you know, looking a little bit suspicious, as this rook on f2 is kind of looking at it, and black's bishops are a little bit awkward placed. I mean, this knight can maybe at some point capture this bishop if this bishop is not pinning. So, I mean, black's pieces are a little bit uncoordinated. Black is missing some development. You know, this knight needs to get out. Black needs to castle. It does look a little bit scary. I mean, sometimes there might be some knight d6 check. If this bishop moves, maybe some knight c7 check. So Maxime decided that the best course of action would be to simply develop this knight on h6 so that he could later castle and just to develop all his pieces. Now, the best move in this position would have been to simply go king f8. This is actually the only move that leaves this as an equal position. And this looks actually like, it looks pretty weird to the bare eye, because you're basically saying, hey, I'm never going to castle in this game anymore. But the idea is actually that you're stopping white from going knight d6 check, so you're placing your king in safety. And actually, sometimes you just want to go knight e7 and then h4 and open up for this rook. Maybe g6, h5, sorry, and then open up for this rook, and maybe black can create their own sort of attack towards white's king. Sometimes you actually don't want to castle, you want to keep the rook over here to be able to do that. So this would have been the best move, but Maxime went knight h6, which doesn't look like a terrible move to the bare eye, but it actually loses the game. Like, straight up loses the game. This is now a plus 3.6 position for white, which is a lot of advantage at this level. So the reason, and there's only one reason this loses the game, is because of bishop d3. This move is attacking the queen with the rook, but it's also attacking this bishop on e4. Now, the only square that the queen can go to is to b4. That's the only square. But the idea here is that white is gaining a lot of tempos. I mean, knight d6 is actually not so scary. The king can simply go to f8. There's not really a lot going on, but the issue is rook b1. And after queen c5, there's actually now knight takes e4. And I just find this so pretty. And now, before, you know, the knight couldn't take this because there was the pin. But now, if black captures the queen, this queen is also under attack. So after captures, black actually just loses a piece. So yeah, because in this position, black cannot capture on d3 because there is knight c7 check. And then, you know, white is winning this rook. So I just find this so pretty. Let's say that, for instance, black would have gone queen e7. Then there would have been knight d6 check. And then after a king goes somewhere like to f8, after bishop takes e4, if pawn takes, then, and I just find this so nice, there's actually g5. And it's so beautiful how white is simply just pushing back all of like black's pieces. And here, let's say that, you know, the knight goes to g4, there is rook takes b7, and once again this queen is so badly placed here on e7, and where is the queen gonna go? Let's say, I mean, wherever the queen goes, there's gonna be rook takes f7. This is just a complete disaster for black. So by going knight h6, black is simply allowing themselves to be pushed back into a terrible position where either they lose a piece, they lose this bishop, or where all their pieces are being pushed back, and, you know, I mean, they basically cannot use any of their pieces. So, you know, ironically, black wanted to get this knight out to castle. This move is making them have to leave their king in the center. So, yeah, I just find it fascinating how such a small move can make such a big mistake, but it can. And this is obviously a tactic, but it's not something that, like, immediately, like, you see. not just like a 1 or 2 move tactic. You know what I mean? And I just find those so pretty. So yeah, later on, I can just show you how the game went. Bishop d3. This was how the game went. Black lost a piece, and I mean, if you lose a piece against someone like Fabiano Caruana, I mean, you know, it's pretty much game over. So yeah, in this position, Black ended up resigning because they were, you know, a piece down, and they were going to simplify into an endgame, and there's not really anything that you can do here. I hope, guys, that this video does, 1, make you feel a little bit better about your own blunders, but 2, make you realize that chess is really hard, but chess is really beautiful. And I actually think that it's one of my favorite things, that chess is so complex that one tiny little move can change the whole course of action of a chess game. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all in the next one. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed it. Take care, people.